I want to take a couple of minutes and expand on our discussion of mammals. The first thing I want to discuss is the types of mammals that we see on the Earth and why they're distributed where they are. Just quickly reviewing, again, basically we have our three subclasses of mammals: the monotremes, which are the egg-laying mammals; the marsupials, which are the pouched mammals; and the eutherians, which are the placental mammals. And so when you look at the Earth, every continent then is dominated by eutherian mammals, placental mammals, except for Australia. So again, what I really am getting to here is why has Australia then, why is that where we find the monotremes and the marsupials, and we don't find them in other parts of the world? So this really goes back to plate tectonics and timing, if you will, as to when these groups evolved. So as you may know, at one time all of today's continents were unified in a single mass known as Pangaea. So if we go up to about 250 million years ago, there was just one large continent, Pangaea. And so at this time and shortly after this, as mammals evolved, the monotremes evolved and marsupials evolved. And so again, the Earth's fauna of mammals were monotremes and marsupials. Anyway, then continents began to separate, and a northern mass, the Laurasia, separated from Gondwanaland. Also, you can see that Antarctica and Australia separated as well. And then also shortly after this, South America separates from Africa. Shortly after South America separates is when the placental mammals, true placentals, the eutherians, then evolve. And eutherians just really have a reproductive advantage over marsupials and monotremes. So the eutherians then, again, evolve in Africa, quickly radiate throughout Asia, and will eventually be North America, and dominate throughout. And so then, again, shortly after this, then we have South America dominated by marsupials, and then also Antarctica and Australia. If we move forward then, and again, we're kind of moving bottom to top, it's a little confusing here. So then you can see that essentially, again, we've got Africa, Asia, and North America. North America is eventually going to separate off, and again, it will have its own distribution of eutherians. You can see that India has been separated as well, and I've neglected to mention that, and it's eventually going to work its way up, drive into Asia, and begin to form the Himalayas. And South America, of course, will form a land bridge with North America. So, and also you can see Antarctica is drifting south, and Australia is still isolated. So as we look at modern distribution of continents then, North America eventually forms a land bridge with South America, so the eutherian mammals move from North America to South America and then displace all of the marsupials there, and that's why there are very few marsupials in South America today. India eventually crashes into Asia, and again the eutherians move into India, displace all of the marsupials there. And Antarctica, drifts south, the Earth cools, and really all the land animals freeze to death in Australia, so there aren't any marsupials left there. So the reason all the marsupials and monotremes are isolated in Australia is that's the one continent that never formed a land bridge with the other continents, and so it remained isolated really until modern times, until humans started bringing eutherians to that continent. And so again, it's kind of interesting because then when you look at evolutionary forces, then marsupials have filled a lot of the same kinds of niches that we find eutherians filling on the other continents. And so in some cases we see a lot of similarities between these types of animals, and sometimes there are differences. But again, evolution was working its magic in Australia, while it was on marsupial animals, while evolution was working its magic on the eutherians and the rest of the world. Okay, the other thing I want to do is also come very quickly back to the eutherians and go through at least some of the orders, some of the types of eutherians that we see in the world. And this is certainly not a complete list, but I want to go through a few eutherian orders. And so one of these are the Insectivora. The Insectivora include shrews and moles. The Rodentia. Rodentia is really the most successful group of eutherian mammals, and so it include things like squirrels. This is a marmot from the Yellowstone ecosystem. The beaver is the largest rodent in North America, but the rodents, of course, are noted for having very large incisors, ever-growing incisors, and so they have to gnaw on things to make sure that they wear down those incisors. The lagomorphs would be rabbits and hares. Artiodactyla would be one of two groups of the hoofed mammals, and so the Artiodactyla have even-numbered toes. So examples would be the American bison. Bighorn mountain sheep would be another example. Cows and so on would also be other examples. The Perissodactyla are the odd number of toed hooved mammals. And of course that would include horses, zebras, those kinds of animals. The cetaceans are whales, dolphins, porpoises, and that group. So again, a pretty diverse group, and unfortunately we don't have time to get into all the examples. The carnivora is a very, very diverse group as well, not as successful as rodents, but a pretty diverse group. So includes things like coyotes, cats of various types, and so on. But the carnivora essentially have teeth that are adapted for shearing and tearing. The chiropterans, one of my favorite groups would be bats, Old World and New World bats. And then the primates, of course, which include a group known as prosimians, lemurs and their relatives, also monkeys and their relatives, Old World and New World monkeys, also greater and lesser apes, and humans would also be within the primates. So that's certainly not a complete list, but I wanted to at least go into a little more depth on some of the mammal orders.